Hello everyone, I am Deborah and welcome to my episode. Today we are going to be doing a 2024 recap video, which is to say all of the parades. We're going to be doing a WIP parade followed by a finish parade. So everything that I have been stitching on and I'm going to be carrying forward into 2025, followed by everything that got stitched and finished in this house in 2024. So if you are looking for some fun patterns, if you're just looking for somebody to keep you a little bit of company while you are stitching, you have come to the right place. This is definitely going to be a long video. So I hope that you see some wonderful things, some inspiration, and enjoy the company as you get to do your own stitching. So it's the time of year when we love to talk about some statistics. So let's start out with just a couple of statistics about the stitching that you're going to be seeing in the video today. First of all, in 2024, I started this year with 13 WIPs. So those were projects that I was carrying forward from the past. And I will say I was counting my numbers a little bit differently in the past. So that 13 did include a whole series of 4, most of which I have finished and only one of which is going to be worked on in the next year. But 13 WIPs that I was bringing forward with me into 2024. Into 2025, I'm only actually carrying forward 8 WIPs, which I think is really great. In part, that's because I was really making a concerted effort to reduce the number of projects that I had. Not because I necessarily want a small number to be working on, but just because many of the pieces that were there had been sitting around for a little while, and I wanted to get them done, get them out so that I can see them and enjoy them. And then that will give me some kind of, mental breathing room in order to bring other projects into the rotation moving forward. So just kind of a shift in the way that I think about projects. That's really all it was. So 8 projects that I will be carrying forward as WIPs this year, and that will also be in addition to 2 projects that I am planning to restart. I will show you the progress that I have made to date, but rather than counting them as WIPs, they will become restarts, and that'll be the end of that little section there. In addition to the WIPs that I have currently I'm working on, I fully finished, I finished 6 pieces that have not yet been fully finished but are ready to be done. And then in terms of fully finished objects, FFOs, I have 37 pieces to show you that I fully finished in 2024. And that includes 22 that I started and finished in the past year, which I feel like is a fantastic number. I am really pleased. And if you've seen the cover image for this video, which I'm sure you have already, you know that there is a precarious pile all over this table that I have ready to show you. So I am looking forward to that. There are, I will say this before I forget, 2 pieces that you are not going to see in today's video that I did fully finish. That's because I have already given them away. The first of those was the Sewing Bee by Erica Michaels, and I stitched the strawberry version, and that was a piece that I gave away in the Smalls Exchange at the farm in this past fall. So I did talk about that in a previous video if you want to go back and take a look at it. The other one that you are not seeing today is a piece by Hands On Design, and that's called Turn Up the Beat. And that is a piece that I have also gifted to somebody. I did talk about it in a previous video. It's on my Instagram, and it's a piece that I finished on an old record, which I thought was a really fun finish. But if you want to go and take a look at that, there are details about it in a previous video. So that's the stitching kind of statistics for this video. I also had a couple of other quick statistics to go over. First of which is the number of physical cross-stitch shops that I was able to visit in 2024. That was 5. First of which was, of course, Stitch New England. So even though Stitch New England is about 2 hours from me, I consider that to be my local Needleworks shop, and I do try and get up there at least a couple of times a year. So did get up to visit Stitch New England a couple of times. On a trip to Pennsylvania, I did visit the Strawberry Sampler for the first time, which was a lovely shop, and I was extremely tempted by many things in there, and added to my pattern and fabric collection there. On a trip to past New York, I was able to make another visit to Hobby House, as well as visit the Stitching Corner, which is a new shop that has just recently opened there in New York as well. Both lovely shops. And then here in New England, we have a new shop called the Threaded Needle, which opened in North Grafton, Massachusetts. It's not actually that far away from me. It's about 75 minutes away, and I do need to get back up there and make another visit. So all of those were lovely shops. I also attended 3 in-person cross-stitch retreats this past year. The first of which was a one-day retreat called Stitch Maine in, you guessed it, Maine. And then I also went again to Stitch New England and Stitch In at the Farm, both of which happened here in the fall in New England. All 3 of which were absolutely fantastic. And then I also had 4 other kind of stitching events that I participated in. One was a small group get together of New England stitchers that happened in the spring. There's also the monthly Connecticut Stitching group, Connecticut Stitching Circle group that I am part of. I have to let you in on a little secret, which is I've actually already fully recorded this video and I'm having to record it again. So if I stumble or I'm like, did I talk about this already? It's because I've already done this once, unfortunately. Anyway, Connecticut Stitching Circle, which is our monthly group. If you're in the area, we meet at the Panera in Wallingford, 10 a.m. the first Saturday of the month. So we would love to see you if you're able to join us in the future. And then I also participated in the Superb Owl and the Jingle Ball. So a whole lot of really good stitchy activities, memories, all of that over this last year. So I think that 2024 was a pretty great stitching year, at least in my book. So in terms of kind of how I keep track of some statistics, I've changed how I do that a little bit. I used to track like all of the threads that I used and what I was watching while I was stitching and all kinds of things. And over time, I've kind of realized that's not really information that I feel like I need to keep track of long term. I do like to know when I start something, when I finish it, the basic kind of information, but I don't really feel like I need a whole lot of additional information, at least long term. So my new kind of way that I have been tracking it is in my planner. This is very similar to the Book of Days that many people use, and I just have a monthly spread at the start of it, and I just write down what project I worked on a particular day, if I started it, if I finished it, if I fully finished it, when I filmed my videos, if I went to any type of stitching event, things like that. So that's kind of really all I track at this point. And then I just have those fun stickers and things. So for me, that was a pretty good stitching month. There were also times in which I had really very little stitching. That does happen occasionally. I don't beat myself up out about it. This is a hobby. I enjoy it while I'm working on it, but I don't feel like I need to just push myself to stitch all the time every day. So that is just a quick and easy way that I now keep track of my information. And I was able to just kind of quickly go through this morning and tally that information up. So those are my statistics. With that, I think I'm going to launch into this very precarious pile of stuff. So I hope that you enjoy and see some inspiration along the way. All right, the first WIP that I'm going to be carrying forward into 2025 is this piece by Hands On Design. It's called Snow Much Fun, and this is from the Banner Year series. So it is 3 small pieces that are fully finished in this banner style. And I, rather than having to stitch this, cut it apart, fully finish it as this style, I was lucky enough that I, on a trip to Germany many years ago, found these pieces of cross-stitch fabric that have already been cut into triangles or hem stitched, and they were sitting in my kind of pile of fabric for a really long time because I didn't know what to do with them. And then I saw this pattern and I was like, it's perfection, it's heaven. So I pulled those out, and the dimensions were basically perfect. You can see that they fit without having to make any changes to the pattern, which is lovely. So I have 2 blue ones and 1 white one that I am stitching on. And at this point I have finished Snow, which is the first one. And I am stitching these with sulky threads. I did try to match them fairly closely to the original colors, but it was just an opportunity to try out the sulky threads. So I've got section number 2, which is much. And then our last piece is the fun piece. So this is one to be working on this year. I am definitely a seasonal stitcher, so I will be planning to pick this up now that Christmas is over and I'm done with my holiday stitching. I will be working on my winter pieces for the next couple of months. I do have to be kind of a little bit careful with these because of the dark fabric, but I do have a new light that definitely helps with that. So we've got that one to finish, hopefully in the fairly near future. The next one to show you is a very recent finish. This is probably the one that I started most recently. And this is part of a sal that the Redheaded Stitcher on YouTube is running. And this is a piece for the winter solstice. So this is Frosty Tiny Town. This is my extremely impressive start on it, by the way. I am stitching this on 20 count Aida, and I decided to do that because I already know how I'm going to finish it, the piece that I'm going to finish it on, and it doesn't quite fit in terms of size and the full dimensions of the piece. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to cut out just one of these buildings, and that will make the piece the right size for my finishing. And then in addition to cutting out one of the buildings, I'm going to substitute one of the buildings for the one that is in the Frosty frill, the accompanying piece, just because I really like that roof line. So just a couple of changes to make to this pattern, but it will fit the piece that I am planning to finish it on. It will feature the buildings that I really like out of the series, and we'll go from there. So that will be another one, because it's a winter piece, definitely one I'm going to be picking up and working on in the very near future. And if you'd like to join in on the sal, even though it's started, you're welcome to join, I am sure. And the hashtag that is being used for that is Frosty Sal. So definitely plan to join us if you would be interested in that. And then, oh, that's my project right for that. All right, now I'm starting to get the pile down enough that I can kind of maneuver a little bit more. This next one to show you is a very long-term project for me. So those of you who've been watching me in the past know this, but if you're new, when I am working on bigger pieces, because I do tend to be a smalls stitcher, it's why I have so many pieces done. When I am working on a bigger piece, I really like to break those projects down into kind of measurable sections so that I have kind of a checkpoint that I can achieve and reach and that I can work toward as a goal as well. Because if I just say, oh, I'll work on this project and when it gets done, that doesn't necessarily mean that for me it ever gets done. It may be, who knows when it will get done. So particularly when I'm working on these big projects, I like to set these measurable goals in order to make sure that I actually achieve them. So this one is, like I said, kind of a big project. This is, it was a 2-year project when I started it. At this point, there's about 18 months left. And the reason for that is this is a piece that we are stitching to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which is coming up on July 4, 1776. It is coming up July 4, 2026. That's the 250th anniversary. So a couple of us from the Connecticut Stitching Circle and then a few others are working on this just over the course of, at this point, the next 18 months or so in order to complete that in time for the commemoration date. Excuse me. So what is it that we're working on? We are working on Little House Needleworks Early Americans series. You know what? I put them back in my project bag because the first time they were just spilling all over the place. So this is a series of 9 blocks that feature Americans that you probably read about in school. So it's got Abigail Adams, it's got John Hancock, it's got Nathan Hale, it's got Paul Revere, all of the people that we read about in school. And so I have at this point finished all of the outline blocks, as well as my first block, which is the Abigail Adams piece. I did rearrange them just so that they kind of fit a little bit differently than the order in which they were published, although I don't think it matters which order you put them in. And so I've just given myself a very sedate schedule to get this done over the next 18 months at this point. And then what I'm also doing is I'm going to be designing my own border. So along the top, it's going to say semi-quincentennial, which is 250th, and I'm going to have the dates there. And then along the three other edges, what I'm going to be doing is also researching other people who are maybe not the famous early Americans, people who are lesser known, but for one reason or another still played a very significant role in either the revolution itself or in the founding of what we consider to be the United States. And then I'll just be putting their names around the edge. I'm leaving that to last so I have time to kind of think about it and research, learn about it. But I think that one is going to be a really great kind of a way to commemorate the 250th. And then I am stitching this on a 20 count Aida that I got from Atomic Ranch Fabrics. It's a very kind of pale green. All right, so I'm moving this precarious pile to that precarious pile. I feel like these videos are always a question of will everything spill out over the course of the video? All right, the next piece to show you is my very first Nora Corbett piece. And this is one called Miss Spider. Typically fancy ladies are not my style. Like, I think they're beautiful. They're just not something I tend to stitch. But I saw this one and I just thought, I definitely need to have that one. And I think part of that is because I think that she looks like a Gothic librarian. And so that is actually what I am going to be stitching, is rather than stitching kind of all of the spider elements, I'm going to stitch the central figure and then finish it from there. And my progress so far is, here we go. You'll notice that I didn't get all of my ironing done. That is how life goes sometimes. But this is my progress so far. And like I said, I'm just going to be stitching that central image. And I think what I'll be doing is I'm going to finish the outline, and that way all I have to do is the fill-in, which is very easy. She stitches up quite quickly. I've been surprised. This has only been a couple of stitching sessions for me. And I am stitching this on a 36 count beetroot by Fox and Rabbit. I thought that just went so well with the starkness of the black and gray in her dress. But because I am stitching this on a 36 count, it means that the called for beads that I would put on it, which were used for a 32 count, won't fit. So one of the things I will need to decide at some point is whether I'm going to find replacement beads, which my understanding is that should be something very easy to do, or potentially stitch it with metallic thread rather than beads. I'm not quite sure which I'm going to do yet, but it will be something I think about kind of once I have finished doing the stitching itself. The problem with having all this linen is there's like stuff sticking to me. All right. The next piece to show you is one of my older WIPs, and this is a piece by Happy Sloth called The Captains. This is about Star Trek, and I grew up loving Star Trek. I'm still a Star Trek fan, so definitely just one of those fanish pieces that I enjoy. And it is old enough that you'll notice that it only includes Michael from New Star Trek, but it's also old enough that it doesn't include any of the newer captains that have come since Michael. So after debating about this with myself for a while, what I have decided to do is I'm just going to stitch the 5 classic captains and not worry about the newer captains. And then I'm also going to stitch them individually. So I've decided that in terms of how I'm going to fully finish it is I have bought some kind of small picture frames, like small gold picture frames, and I'm going to frame each of them individually and then display them together. But I think it's going to make it kind of look like a family portrait gallery, which I think is fun. So like I said, stitching each of them individually. This is the first one I stitched, which is Captain Cisco. And this is using called for DMC, and I think the colors are just really, really stunning. And then I'm just kind of using random different pieces of fabric. I believe these are all 28 count fabrics. So I've got him on just this kind of standard even weave. I then stitched Captain Kirk, who's on this blue mystery linen. And there is enough of this that I will stitch another one. I think it's going to be Captain Archer who goes on the other piece there. And then I am currently working on Captain Picard. So we've got his comm badge, we've got his pip, and then the start of his uniform. And one of the things I really like about this project is it is also just a lot of fill-in, which can be, you know, in some cases tedious, but it can also just be exactly the right kind of like routine mindless stitching that you want depending on where you are. So I will be continuing to work on that one. And what I'm thinking I might do is actually start a Star Trek rewatch and be working on those while I'm watching Star Trek. So that seems very fitting. All right, this next one is actually my oldest WIP. I've talked a little bit in more detail about this in past videos, which I'm not going to get into today, but the long story short is this is a piece that my mom asked me to stitch for her. I think it's been about 25 years at this point. I started it, and it was more than I really could handle, wanted to do. It just became a very difficult piece for me. It's not my style. And so I only got as far as about a quarter of the way through. And then I just said, I just can't keep working on this. I put it aside for a really long time, but I want to make the push to finish it. And thanks to a viewer, my idea for finishing it at this point, because I am not going to stitch this entire thing, is I am going to chart out the words of one of my mom's favorite Bible verses and put that here in the shape of the rest of the wreath, and then just do the little bit of stitching and back stitching that is needed on what I have already stitched in order to complete the piece, keep it in that wreath style, and go from there. So the full image for what it would look like is here, and this is called a Wreath of Roses by Dimensions. But rather than finishing all of the rest of that, it will have kind of words there instead, which I think is a really good compromise. And then I've also pulled out this Hélène Lebert cross-stitch alphabets book, and it's possible that I'll be able to use at least a little bit of that for some of the lettering. That is kind of what has been holding me up. I say this, there's always an excuse for this one. Kind of what has been holding me up is the need to sit down and actually chart that out and figure out what it is that I need to do. Fortunately, Rachel, who is another stitcher from Connecticut, she is challenging us to finish these projects. She has a project that she needs to get done, but she's not really interested in stitching it. So we're going to be kind of sending each other weekly messages of check-ins and actually showing each other. We have to show each other some progress on our pieces this next year, each week. Sorry, I dropped my paper. So I think that will hopefully be enough to get me across the finish line on that project. All right, this next one is one of I consider it a summary piece, and this is from Christiane Dahlbeck, who is a German designer. I'll have the information about this book down below. This is just my working copy, but I call this piece Flowers and Bees, and I think it's this really beautiful wreath of flowers and these couple of lifelike bumblebees. And this is another one that I bit off more than I can chew in stitching about a year and a half ago. Started working on this with somebody for a sal, and then I didn't get it done. So this is one that I really would like to finish this year again in my summer stitching. I think that bumblebee is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and I'm stitching it on this. I think this is a 32 count, kind of a pale mottled yellow fabric, which I think looks lovely. So definitely one I would like to get stitched this year. And as a seasonal stitcher, it's good to know that there is always something coming up, but it will definitely wait until the weather is a little bit warmer. Okay, the next one to show you is the one that I had said kind of considered last year as one WIP, but it's a series of 4. And this is the Gather Round series by Hands On Design. I was a member of the club when this set of patterns was originally released, and I started it didn't get it done that year, but I am working on it at this point throughout each of the seasons as they arrive. And this is the last of the pieces that I have to finish. So I haven't started it, but it is a winter piece, so it will get started and hopefully finished and fully finished early in the first quarter of 2025. And all of these patterns have now been released, so anyone can purchase them. And this one is called Gather Pinecones. So again, I am only stitching 2 of the 3 patterns from each of these pieces. I stitch the quilty block and I stitch the building block. And then I will show you a little later in the video what my finish is and why I'm choosing to only stitch 2 of them. But like I said, another winter piece, definitely one that will get started pretty soon. All right, and then at this point, what we've got left is the 2 pieces that I have started, but I am planning to, at this point, restart. So I will show you my progress, but where I have gotten this far is as far as I'm going to get in this iteration. But I did want to show it to you. I don't currently have plans to when I'm going to fully finish or when I'm going to restart these. It might be 2025. It might not. I'm not really concerned about it, but I figured I would show those to you in the video. So this first one is a piece called Reflections on the 4th by Silver Lining Creations. And the image is really not very clear. It's on this dark navy blue fabric, but what it is exploding fireworks over an array of trees and then some reflections in the water below the trees. I do believe that this is an out-of-print pattern at this point. Unfortunately, I picked it up from a shop that had just a lot of really old stock. I'm sure that you could probably find it on the secondary market, but I don't think it's one that it is unfortunately not readily available at this point. And when I started it, I did start it on a navy blue fabric. This is a 32 count mystery fabric. And I've got one of the fireworks and then the outline of some of the trees. But in part because of this navy blue fabric, it's not, with my eyes, it is really difficult for me to see dark fabrics. It's a very schlubby fabric, and so it's difficult to stitch on as well. And you couple that with the fact that this is an old pattern, so there is a lot of half stitches and quarter stitches and blended threads and metallic threads and all of that. So it just altogether is not a particularly enjoyable stitching experience, but I really do love the pattern, and so I do want to have it in some way, but I don't think that I am going to finish it in the iteration that I have started it. So what my current thought is I'm going to try something else, which is I'm going to try and make it kind of a 3D sewing plus cross stitch project. And what I have done is I have bought a couple of printed fabrics that have some of the elements of the image so that all I would have to do is only stitch a portion of the pattern. And so this one, for example, is obviously trees, and then I could actually stitch the fireworks scene here in this open space. And then I have also bought kind of a comparable sized piece that is some water. And I think what I would like to do is sort of fray them together and cut and fray the fabrics a little bit and then reattach them to each other with maybe like a running stitch, so that you do get the trees and the water, and then you would have the space where the stitching could go. And I could always put, kind of do a couple of stitches and outlines in the trees that are printed, some of the reflections in the water, but really kind of make it a multi-craft kind of, not fully 3D, but kind of layered approach to the project. That's the plan. I'm not sure how it's going to work in execution yet. You'll also notice that, this blue and green are very, very different. And it's obviously not a dark fabric, which I think is one of the things that is really beautiful about seeing the fireworks themselves. So I do want to experiment and see if I can actually dye this fabric. So at least there's a wash of color in the background that is kind of standardizes everything. I do need to test that out, and I will test it. So that's kind of the stage that I am at with this project. But that's, if it all works out, I think it'll be fantastic. I think it'll be a wonderful project. I'm just not sure yet if it will work out or not. We'll find out together in the future. I'm also hoping that this pile does not fall apart. Okay, the other piece that I have started, but I'm planning to restart, is this heartstring samplery piece, and this is called the Simple Living Sampler, and it's just got this really wonderful set of words. I am planning to stitch just the words rather than the border, and I had pulled out a Fox and Rabbit fabric called Duxbury, which I think is this just beautiful mottled dark neutral, and you'll see that I think the words, I'm stitching them just monochrome with one over dyed floss. And I think that the piece that I originally kind of pulled for it, I think is just a little bit too light on this dark fabric. So what I'm planning to do is restart it. So my original color was this Color and Cotton Frosted Spruce, which, you know, when you have 6 strands up against it, looks great, but one strand, which I think is what I'm doing, not so much. So what I'm planning to use is this Tom and Lily Bronze, which is just a darker green, and I think that will stand out just a little bit better. And so I am still planning to use this fabric. I think it's really just a question of a different floss that I need to choose in order to work on that piece. So like I said, I'm not sure when I'm going to restart either of those. I'm not giving myself any kind of timeline or deadline on it, but that is the plan that I have for restarting both of those projects at some point in the future. All right, that is the actual WIPs to show you. So those are the projects that have already been started and are going to be carried forward into 2025. The next thing to show you is, so I guess I should say, if that's all you were here for, thank you for joining me. It was fantastic. Hope you saw some really great patterns. But if you're here for all of the finishing as well, that's what the rest of the video is going to be about. So, like I said, I did get a whole heck of a lot of stuff fully finished this year, but I did also get some pieces just finished, and we'll be working on fully finishing, hopefully, these in 2025. So the first one to show you is actually a piece that you've not seen at all. It was one that I had planned to work on in this kind of Christmas season in December this year. I didn't get it done in the course of my Flossmas videos, but I did get it done very shortly after that, and that is my French horn piece by Mill Hill. This is just one of the small Mill Hill ornaments. I knew this was going to be a quick stitch, but also it's a really quick stitch. It only took me a couple of hours to do from start to finish. And I would say there is just as much, I think, beading as there is stitching in this. And so I do know how I'm going to fully finish this, but it is going to be part of a series of 3 pieces that I fully finish together. And this was the first of those that I've actually stitched. So it is, I highly doubt that this is going to get fully finished in 2025 because I still need to stitch those other pieces, but you never know. I do have everything. I do have the idea for what I'm going to do, but for now, this one will probably just go into the little box to be finished at some point in the future. And this was a gift from a stitchy friend. So thank you again for such a fantastic present. I love it. And it was such a cute little stitch. And I'm going to put this one up here since it's kind of delicate. Okay. The next piece that I finished this year was a piece by Curtis Bowinger, and unfortunately this is, I believe, also an out-of-print fabric pattern. I apologize, but this is a piece called Season to Season, the Apple Branch. All of the information will of course be down in the description box below. And what I really loved about this piece is, depending on how you display it, you can always have the name of one particular season facing up. And so I stitched this just each section in that particular season. So over the course of the past year. And then when I finish it, I'm going to be framing it. And then I will actually be rotating the piece each season so that that season is the one top and visible. I stitched this on a 25 count even weave by Lori Holt. I used kind of the substitute DMCs that were recommended. The chart was originally stitched with DMC flower thread, which I didn't have, so I used the regular cotton DMC. And unfortunately, this fabric is just a little bit lighter than the one that was in the model, so I feel like a few of the colors, in particular the white, doesn't quite pop as much as I would have liked. So what I'm probably going to be doing is I'm just going to give this a little spritz with some Instant Antique. I will test this before I do it, but I think that that will just sort of make everything kind of a little more defined, I guess, in terms of the colors. So that is how I intend to fully finish that one. I am starting to get just a little pile of things that I need to actually frame, which is not my favorite finishing technique, I will say. So, but again, the pile is getting just big enough that I think that is something I need to sit down and do one weekend. All right, this next piece that I finished is one by Picotta, and it's called Mouton Doux, and it is these cute little just sort of prancing, dancing sheep, and this is a piece that I bought many years ago from the French Needle. And it is a full kit. It comes with the DMC and the fabric, but what I decided is to stitch it in quite large scale. So the fabric that I wound up going with is a 10 count Tula fabric. And then I stitched it over 2, so that made this functionally a 5 count fabric. And you can see it is absolutely stunning now that it is done. And it's just a very easy piece to stitch. It is just a couple of some stitches, just enough to kind of give you the outline of the sheep and the clouds, and then back stitching to fill in some of those details. I love the large scale of this. It's something that I'm planning to kind of frame up and hang in my sunroom. But even though I love the finish, this process of stitching it was really not something that I enjoyed. I stitched it using DMC, like I said, but I used all 6 strands of floss, and I chose to do the DMC cotton rather than pearl cotton because I wanted it to still lay flat rather than be rounded like pearl cotton. But stitching with 6 strands of floss and with the scale of it, it was just difficult to kind of start and anchor threads. I honestly had to, you could only get about a dozen stitches in with the length that I had before you had to stop and start all over again. So in the end, I decided to not do the second half of the piece, which is this larger image. I do still have all of the supplies. It's maybe going to be one of those someday projects. So at some point I may feel like picking this up again, but this is definitely a finish for now. I will be very happy with just the one that I have finished up and on display. And, you know, like I said, if I do the other part someday, great. If not, I consider it a fully finished piece as well. Going from very large scale to very small scale, I've got another Mill Hill ornament, and this one is called Fall Mailbox. And this was one of my purse projects for a while. I do like to keep just a small project in a small bag in my purse. You never know when you're going to need to just pull out some cross stitch. And so this was my purse project for quite some time. Again, I'm going to be finishing this one in the same way as the French horn. And so this is the first of 3 fall pieces that will go on that piece eventually, but another one that will just be in the to finish box for some time. The next piece that I have for you was a very quick piece because it is just kind of these outlines of the umbrella and the lettering there. This is a piece called Il Pleut by Marie-Thérèse Saint-Aubin. And this is a freebie piece that you can find on the Casa Senina website. You do have to kind of, if I remember, go through the checkout process, but it is free. And this is a piece that I stitched. This is on a 32 count Be Stitch Me fabric of the month. And this is one that I stitched in kind of in honor of Sarah and Sally, who are Sew Me Sarah and Flossie Sews and Grows, also here on YouTube, both of whom are turning 50 this year, and they challenged themselves to do 50 starts in 2024. And they asked people for prompts and ideas and all kinds of things. So this one was for the prompt of something with an umbrella. And so I stitched this along with them as they were working on that prompt, just as kind of celebration of two online friends that I enjoy interacting with, and to help them commemorate this really wonderful year. So again, Sally and Sarah, happy belated birthdays to both of you, and congratulations on a major achievement this year. It was fantastic to watch you do that. The next piece, going back to larger scale, you notice that I like to do that, is this piece called Abe Shot by Jardin Privé. And this is a piece that I stitched on 18 count linen. So it's, again, quite large. And I stitched this using Anchor Black. And this is a piece that I am planning to fully finish as a doorstop, and it's going to go here in my craft room. So I did kind of stitch it so that I had plenty of fabric to make the doorstop tube there. But again, a really quick and easy stitch, but very kind of eye-catching. I love that one. So that is Abe Shot. And that one is available as a PDF through Jardin Privé's website. That's probably the best way to get that one. This next one is, I feel like I'm just like ping-ponging back and forth between big and small. This is another tiny, tiny project. This one is called Haunted Painting by Tiki and Stitch. And these are homages to the stretching portraits from the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland or Disney World. And I have always really enjoyed that ride. I particularly love the stretching portraits. And so when I saw these, there is a series of all 4 of the portraits. I definitely had to have that and start them. But you'll notice that even though they are small, they are full coverage. But a lot of the full coverage is just the sky, kind of the background color. And I decided that if I didn't need to stitch the sky, I didn't need to stitch the sky. So what I wanted to do was find a fabric that would allow me to just use the fabric itself as most of the sky. So this is a piece, this is a printed piece from Fabric Flare. And so you'll see that I did stitch the entire piece. It really is genuinely that small. But anything that was truly just the background sky, I just left as the fabric itself. I really love these patterns, but I will say this is definitely one that you will pull a whole ton of DMC and then only use it a very little bit. So for example, the yellow eye of the alligator, that is the only stitch that you use that color in this piece. So lots of color changes. It looks great in the end, but do be aware of that. And you'll also unfortunately notice I literally stitched this in the middle of this fabric, but that's because I was again trying to color match the sky. And the reason I picked this fabric is it has each of the colors that are the background in all 4 of the portraits. So I will be able to use the same fabric, which means all of the pieces will be exactly the same size for fully finishing. And then there will still be plenty of other fabric that I can use for other projects in the future, I'm sure, just because that project is so small. So those were all of the pieces. Oh, there we go. Those are the pieces that I finished in 2024, but definitely still need to get fully finished. So that leaves us with all of the pieces that I did fully finish. It is a giant pile. So before I get started, I'm going to grab a sip of water and then we will get going on this amazing fully finished pile of stuff. Okay, so these are in no particular order. These are in the order of this is how I was able to fit them on the table. So we're going to be kind of jumping around again in terms of theme and all of those, but that's okay. All right. This is, I believe, the physically largest piece that I finished this year, fully finished. This is a piece called Autumn Row by Bent Creek. Bent Creek has a whole series of these row pieces. And my long-term plan is to stitch a number of them so that I have one of each of these for each of the seasons. At the minute, I have autumn, and then I have the original winter cover for this. If you're not aware of what this is a draft excluder. So it's one of those pieces that goes on the bottom of a window ledge or on under kind of at the bottom of a door to keep the draft and the wind from coming through. I did not make this entire sock. The interior of this is a draft excluder that I bought on clearance a couple of years ago, and it had a winter cover, fabric cover on it. And so all I have done is made the actual cover for this piece. I didn't even try very hard, like covering up that zipper. It's going to sit on the floor. Nobody's going to see it. And then I have just a little kind of matching fabric on the end. I definitely learned some things in terms of the finishing of this one I will take into future draft excluder covers. But I stitched this on, I believe this is a 24 count linen. I knew I had this big kind of sock to fill, so I wanted it to be quite a large piece. But even so, the stitching of this piece was very fast. This was a piece that I think I started and finished in the weekend at the farm a couple of years ago. So it goes very, very quickly. It's just the size of the fabric that really makes it look quite large. So like I said, I did not make the interior of the sock, which is weighted down, and I just added the zippers so that I can change them out each season. All right, let me see. Okay, I think that one's back off screen again. All right. The next one to show you is a piece called All Sorts by Stitch Rovia. And this is a piece that is also part of a much larger pattern. You will notice, if you're new here, is I really do make a lot of adaptations and changes to patterns. I figure there are so many patterns in the world that I want to stitch, and oftentimes, sometimes I love the entire design, and sometimes the thing that attracts me is just one portion of the design. And so I figure rather than sort of forcing myself to stitch the entirety of something simply to have stitched the entirety of something, what I will do is I will just stitch the part that I like. And then I'll move on and work on something else that I like. And that is perfectly okay. And that is perfectly something that we can do. So in this case, this is a much larger piece that just has a whole lot more of the All Sorts candy. And I decided after having stitched a little bit of it, as much as I love the colors and as much as I love the final piece, it was not something that I was actually enjoying stitching. Like sometimes the process of stitching a project just isn't really something that we're appreciating. And so I decided to just because of the letters, I started in the center. This was a mystery piece of 36 count. I thought it was mystery 36. I wasn't sure. So just in case, I started it in the center, but that turned out to be work really well because in the center of the piece is this sort of approximately circle shape. And so I decided that rather than stitching the whole piece, which is a rectangle, I just stitched that center circle. And then I finished it on this, what was a Halloween decoration, and I just used kind of chalkboard paint to roughly cover it up. And it does have this flat bottom, which I thought also really worked for the shape of the piece as well, and then finished it with this kind of candy fabric as well. So I really love this piece. This is probably one I am going to keep up in the summertime because of the colors, but a really good example of, just saying you don't have to stitch an entire piece in order to finish it and in order to love it. So that was definitely one of those lessons that I learned. All right. This next one is a piece that I started and finished at the Stitch New England retreat. This is just a little piece by Bent Creek, and it's called Leaf Flag. And this is the entirety of the piece. I fell in love with it the moment I saw it because I think that just, I don't know why, but that little squirrel just seems like he's looking at us with such attitude of like, yep, this is my leaf and it is not yours. So when I saw it there at the retreat, I grabbed everything I needed and started and finished it right there. And then this kind of the piece that it is finished on is something that I bought at Joann, I think maybe a couple of years ago. And it is this little block of wood, and it had this piece of acrylic. It has some saying on it. And so I just covered it in scrapbook paper and affixed the piece to it, and then added a little bit of decor. I decided to not put it facing with this side because I thought that that might detract from the stitching a little bit, but I could always use that for a piece in the future because this is something I can change out. And then I just added in that little bit of kind of jute and decoration there to fill up that space. So an easy finish, definitely one that I enjoy seeing. Right. The next one is another autumnal piece, and this is the Philanthropic Pumpkin by Hands On Design. This is a piece that she released as a fundraiser, a charity piece. She has said that this is not going to ever be released as a sale as a pattern for sale. I am passing the stash with mine on this one. I know that other people have been doing the same because we know that this is a limited supply pattern, but a piece that I had finished stitching, I think in 2023, and then fully finished in 2024. It kind of sat there for a while because it just seemed intimidating to me, but I will say, having done it, it is not difficult at all. None of the steps in this process were difficult. There are a number of steps, and then you have to take your time in order to do it, but none of it was difficult. I'm actually planning to do a very similar finish on a different hands-on design piece, hopefully in the new year as well. But for what it is worth the effort, and really it is not particularly difficult to do this. It's just steps. So that is the Philanthropic Pumpkin. Then I have a small piece, pattern that I bought on Etsy, and this is called Hobbit Mealtime. Again, there was a little more to the pattern, which I left off, but this one just makes me laugh. I have one of my cats who in some ways sort of acts like a hobbit in that he wants to eat constantly. There just should be that much food in his life all the time. And so we have to very carefully regulate what he has access to. Coincidentally, this is actually the number of meals he has every day. But I started it because I enjoyed the movie. I think that scene is funny. I don't think that scene is in the book. It's been long enough since I've read it. I don't think that there is that exact scene in the book. But I just thought it was cute. Stitched it with a couple of Victorian motto threads, and then finished it very simply on this wooden piece. I didn't even have to stain it. It was great, with some complementary fabric. And then this hangs over the cat food dishes down in the basement because why not? The next piece, another hanging piece. This is Salty Seagulls by Helen Daly, Helen D. And I fell in love with those seagulls the moment I saw them. I think they have such attitude, and he's got his little neckerchief and their booties. I thought that they were super cute. And this was something that I stitched on a piece of 28 count even weave, which I dyed myself a number of years ago. I found this complementary fabric, and then for the finishing, this was originally an unfinished piece that I picked up at a craft store. Excuse me. And then what I did is I just layered on stain and paint, and then I used some sandpaper in order to kind of strip things off so that it had the colors of the piece and the fabric, but it wasn't as bold as the stitched piece itself, which I did want to be really the focal point of the piece. So just a fun little afternoon of stitching and sanding, or painting and sanding and doing some things like that. So that is a really cute summer piece that I have up. Continuing on with the flat finishes, this was another piece that I picked up at Michael's. I liked that kind of tile image. And then I have finished this Mill Hill kit called Love Cooking. This was another one of my purse projects. And I just used the washer and magnet, affixed it onto that piece of fabric so that I can swap that out with any other small pieces in the future. So that is Love Cooking by Mill Hill. We also next have, this is a piece by Heart and Hand. And this is called Sunflower Sampler. This is one that I picked up when I was at the Stitching Corner. It was an older pattern and I had never seen it before. And so when I saw it, I was just really drawn to those sunflowers and the colors. And it does come with the fun little kind of crow, just another button company button there. And so this is just a simple piece. It is in a frame. It's kind of a very 3D frame that I've just finished with fabric. And it just kind of plops in there and it rests slightly on the back edge. So it does stay in there. And then if I want to, I'll always be able to swap that out for another piece in another season. So that is Sunflower Sampler by Heart and Hand. Next, we have, keeping up with the kind of summer theme, is a piece called Iced Tea. And this is by Little House Needleworks. And this was originally sold as a kit that came with the Belle Soie silk. It does have, the pattern is a little bit larger. It says Iced Tea, and there's a border around. And I just, as usual, just stitched the part that I really, really wanted to. I wanted just a small, simple summer piece. And then I finished it on just this very easy little kind of stand-up picture frame. And again, something that I can easily swap out with another piece in the future. So that is Iced Tea by Little House Needleworks. Next, we have a piece called Land That I Love, and I am blanking out on the designer. It's one that the moment I hear it, I'm like, yes, that is it. It will be in the description box below, but this is one where you'll be surprised to know I only stitched part of the pattern. I really love that leaping fox dog. I'm not exactly sure, but whatever he is, I love him. And then the original colors of this one were much more traditional red, white, and blue. And I wanted it to be something that I could leave up all summer long. And so I just swapped it out for kind of teals and purples. And then I did keep that blue in the fish in the river. So just a sweet little piece. And this was a box that I picked up at Target. And you can do all kinds of storage in there. So that is Land That I Love. Right. Another summer piece that we have here is, this is the Aloha Summer Sampler by the Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. This is one of their very early stitch-alongs, and originally the full pattern features 25 of these different blocks with small seams in them, which is how I originally intended to stitch it. I did stitch all of the boxes in the center row, and then at that point I decided that I wasn't going to stitch all 25. So what I did is I just picked 5 of the central images that I particularly liked, and then I had to adapt them ever so slightly to fit into the boxes, but that was easy enough to do. Added this tiny little flower stack kind of fabric at the end there to finish up filling that space. And then this is a very large paperclip piece of decor that I picked up at a craft shop, and just to fix that on. So I think it's fun. I think it's a different finish. And this is, again, the Aloha Summer Sampler by the Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. The next one here is just a fully refinish, actually. This is a piece that I had originally finished in 2023, and it was, this is another, I feel like the semi-homemade style is definitely mine, which is I often go to craft stores and look for these pieces that I can adapt and add my cross stitch to without having to completely make something from scratch myself. And so it was originally finished just inside the frame. There was no fabric that kind of enhanced it or went around it, and it felt very blah, unfortunately. And so it hung for a while, and I just was like, I just am not enjoying this. And so I was deciding what to do with it, and I said, I'm just going to try putting a different piece of fabric behind it, see if that changes how I feel about it. And it completely did. It took it from something that I thought was very blah and boring that I was not enjoying to something that I think just pops. I think it just really draws your eye. And all that took was the addition of this background fabric there. So kind of a good lesson there. This is a piece that is called the Inspire Ornament by M Designs, and so you can see it says Inspire here in the lettering, and then that is mirrored on the opposite side. You can actually hang it up so it looks like a tree, or you can have it as I do, kind of on its side. Either one is fine. So you know what, I filmed this video and then I was running out of space, and so and then it corrupted the file, and I had to completely refilm it, and now it's like your battery is off, and so my editing software is terrible. So you are gonna get to watch me go plug my computer in just a second. You know what? It's going to take me a second. So I am going to stop this, probably turn it into a second part of the video, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, everybody, welcome back. Sorry about that. It has been an adventurous day. So continuing on, the next piece to show you is a piece that I stitched last year. This was an annual piece that I was working on, which was a temperature sal. Let me find the right way up. So this is a piece called Rainbow Temperature Supernova by Climbing Goat Designs. And as you can see, it looks like the explosion of a star. I think it is just absolutely beautiful. And the version that I stitched is the minimum maximum version. So along each of those spires of explosion, on one side you have the minimum temperature of the day, on the other side you have the maximum. And then I chose to pick my own colors. So rather than doing the traditional kind of rainbow colors that you see in a temperature chart, I just chose to pull some of my own colors. And one of the things that I really appreciated about this chart is Claire's instructions were incredibly clear about how you choose how many colors that you wanted to use, and also how to calibrate the chart for the temperatures in your area. So I know one of the things that often happens with temperature charts is you're like, yeah, I picked colors, but I literally never get those temperatures where I live. You have instructions for how to actually figure out for just your particular area so that you really do get a full range of colors. So this is something that I just finished very easily in a frame, and it hangs typically behind me on the wall here. So that is Rainbow Temperature Supernova by Climbing Goat Designs. Definitely one of my favorite pieces, and visually just incredibly stunning. The next one we'll show you is the Gather Round series. So this is the one that I showed you earlier in the WIP section. And so the spring set, which is Gather, that one's Gather Butterflies, Gather Wildflowers. That one is what this one is called. And as you can see, I just stitched 2 of those. I used all of the materials that came with the kit initially. And so that was the spring piece. And then in the summer, we have Gather Butterflies. So we've got our greenhouse as well as our quilt block. And again, I'm just finishing them using the materials that are provided. And then the autumn piece is called Gather Pumpkins. And so you can see each of those pieces here. And this is the how I have chosen to fully finish this project. This is a double-sided clock, and I just removed the clock mechanism itself, filled this with styrofoam, and then I've added some fabric that I've covered it in. And so with each season, I am able to add one piece to each side of the clock, and then it is mounted onto the wall. So if you're coming or going one way or another, you're able to see one of those images, but that is why I just have the 2 rather than 3 for this piece as it is fully finished. So I do just have one more of those to go, which hopefully will be something that's finished this season. In terms of going back to summer pieces, this is a freebie chart by Sue Hillis. I don't believe it has any name. I just call it Watermelon, very creatively. And so this was stitched with Cosmo Floss and Victorian Motto. And it did also have a border, which I left off. And then this is a piece that originally was kind of a rolling pin. And I just spray painted it white, added that ribbon that goes at the top. And then it just hangs there kind of in the kitchen area in the summertime. So that is by Sue Hillis. It was, I believe, a shop freebie, but there are often pieces kind of floating around at retreats and on freebie tables and things like that. So if it is a piece that you are interested in, definitely keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure that you'll be able to pick one up pretty easily. The next one was last year's annual piece that I was working on. So as I said earlier, when I'm working on larger projects, I like to kind of break it down into pieces. And so this was the first series that I did that with. And this is the ABCs series by Little House Needleworks. And this is Spring ABCs, which I stitched over the course of 3 months. I finished each of them very simply on fabric, and then I used the washer and magnet method. And then the winter piece, which is just right over here behind me, is how they are fully finished and then displayed each season. So that is Spring ABCs. And then we next had Summer ABCs. So I know a couple people had said, like, these colors are more like fall than summer. And I do think that that's true. But I think that this is a really beautiful piece nonetheless, and I enjoyed stitching on it very much. So that is Summer ABCs. And then we have our last one, which is Autumn ABCs. I had finished winter kind of in 2023, so that's why it's not getting shown today. So I really enjoyed all 3 of these. I did it kind of as a little stitch along with a couple of other stitchers and thoroughly enjoyed it. So again, thank you to everybody who was working on that together. It was a lot of fun. Another piece that is a recent finish is this one, which is from the Reindeer Games set by With Thy Needle and Thread. And I saw this kind of peppermint tin or stand, and I thought this would be perfect for that little reindeer piece with their piles of peppermints in the center. So originally this piece was stitched on 40 count. I knew that I wanted to finish it in here, and so I wound up stitching it on 28 count to make it larger and fit the piece a little bit better, and then just backed it with that kind of teal or turquoise and red fabric. This is one of those examples where I feel like everything just worked out so well together, and I keep it kind of just propped up on a shelf for display. So that is from Reindeer Games by With Thy Needle and Thread. I also have another piece that I finished very recently. This is called Winter Typography by Pine Mountain Design. And this is another one where I just plan to swap this out every time I get to a new season or I have another piece that goes in there. And I just finished it with this really, what I felt like was another perfect fabric there with the snowman. And then again, this is only a portion of the pattern. There's about twice as much there, and I just stitched the top half. Really loved stitching with those DMC because they were just a beautiful palette of colors. Early in the year, for one of my original winter pieces for this year, I stitched Clara's Knitting Sampler, and this is a piece by the Sampler Girl. This piece is out of print, but what I have found is if you message the designer on Etsy, she does have an Etsy shop, and several of us have been able to buy it directly from her through that method. And so I just kind of finished it in this little tray, and the feet kind of allow it to rest, and so it is kind of up like it's being framed. And I just stitched that on this opalescent forbidden fiber fabric using, if I remember correctly, the called for DMC. So another fun one. And then we have another kind of summer piece. This is Hedgehog and Hyacinth by the Blue Flower. I did swap out the colors because I didn't have the called for. Those were the cottage garden threads, I think they are. I didn't have those, and so I just picked out a couple of other variegated threads, but I thought that they turned out really beautifully. Really fun, quick summer stitch. I love that they've got little galoshes on. I mean, who doesn't love a hedgehog in a galosh? All right. With that, Give me a second to situate myself because I've got one more bucket of stuff to show you. These are pieces that I have very, very recently fully finished. I did show them in one form or another in my Flossmas videos. So if you did happen to watch that, this is going to be repeat content for you. But if you want to either see them again or you didn't watch those videos, stick around because I do have one more pile of stuff to show you. All right, the first one to show you is, some of these are very unwieldy, I will say that. This is a piece called Peace on Earth by Satsuma Street. And it is these very small letters that spell out peace on earth. And originally the finish is you just leave the perforated paper and you cut it like a banner. And what I decided to do is I cut out right around the letters themselves, mounted it onto some fun felt, and then attached them to these little wooden ornaments, and then I strung them on what was the original ribbon that came with it. And then in some cases I attached also just some buttons and embellishments as well. So this kind of, as you go on, spells out peace on earth. And then this hangs here in my craft room on my blanket shelf. So that was, I love Jodi's colors. She has just absolutely gorgeous colors. So I'm so happy to have that piece finally finished and out on display. This next one is also very unwieldy. You may remember that one of my annual projects last year was an advent calendar by Véronique Engenger. And what I did is I stitched also on perforated paper for these because I knew that I wanted to attach them to these stockings. I found these at Michael's. They are fully functional little stockings, so perfect for just kind of an advent calendar. And so I stitched each of these pieces individually on perforated paper. I then attached them to some felt, if you can see that, and then affixed the felt to the stockings. And then I found this garland at Michael's, which is just tied on. So I was able to just untie a piece of fabric, attach my stocking, retie it. And then I have 2 of these, which together allows me to have all 24 of my stockings on a garland. So it's quite heavy and quite unwieldy, I will say that. But it was such a fun stitch, and I really enjoyed getting to use that. I actually did use it as, this is my favorite, it's the pretzel. I did actually use it as an advent calendar this year, so that was really fun. Another piece that I also very recently fully finished is another advent calendar and another stocking. I didn't intend to sort of have 2 of the same, but I was like, you know what? I like stitching advent calendars. I like both of these garlands. There we go. So this is just kind of a much smaller scale advent calendar. This is a piece by a German designer. I will put the information down below. This is a piece that I stitched throughout Flossmas in 2023. And then I didn't actually get it fully finished until just a couple of weeks ago. So I stitched this on 36 count fabric, and then it is in these little stamp designs. And I stitched it all kind of together in one piece of fabric. And then what I did is I just ran running stitches in between each of them using a zigzag stitch, going in all 4 directions to kind of seal off the edges. And then I cut them out with pinking shears, and then I attached them just with these little Velcro dots that I had bought. And so if I want to, I can always change them. I could put them on something else. I could rearrange the order that they're in. And so I do have all 24 of those tiny little pieces there as well. And that one I didn't use as a functional advent calendar. I just kind of had it out on display, but altogether I have that. Okay, we are really coming to the end on this one. So these are just the last couple of pieces that I have fully finished in the last month or so. So this one is Merry and Bright by Dimensions. And I used just kind of this new to me technique, which is kind of just stitching around. You put wrong sides together, you stitch around, you stuff your pillow, excuse me, and then you use a blanket stitch, just kind of a decorative stitch to close everything up. And then I use this cute little Cath Kidston fabric there on the back. And then I used the same technique to also finish up this pomander. This originally was another frosted pumpkin stitchery piece. It's part of their Fruits of the Month SAL. And what I decided is, rather than stitching them as originally designed or as the full piece, I took out what was just the cute little mouth on this one. And then I filled that in, and then I just used Anchor pearl cotton to make a whole series of French knots around it. So to turn it into a pomander, which is the kind of Christmas oranges that people decorate often with children using cloves, and then they become very scented and harden up. And so I deliberately left it very rustic. I didn't try and make the swirls perfect. I wanted it to look like something that you had maybe done with a kid. And so I finished that up as an adaptation and turned it into a Christmas pomander and used that same fabric on the back. Another one that I finished very recently and stitched very recently is Humbug by Hello from Liz Matthews. And so this is one that I have loved ever since I saw it. And so I did finally stitch that up this year. Finished it on the back using this cute fabric that's kind of this Victorian Dickensian look scene to it. And then I just used some jute to frame that. I also stitched up this piece this winter, and that is A Merry Little Christmas by Bent Creek. Just another sweet little piece. And this is actually the ornament that is called for in the Reindeer Games set. It came with it. So I just used it for another piece, and I just stained that, added some little baker's twine around the edge. There you go. In terms of, this was a piece from the Historical Sampler Company's Advent calendar last year, so the 2023 Advent calendar. This is called Reindeer Snow Globe, or Snow Globe Reindeer, one way or another. And this was part of the Advent calendar, and it came with this canvas, it came with the Ada and the ribbon, and so all I did is, instead of placing it on an easel as they provided, I just finished it up with this little, again, Cath Kidston fabric. So another ornament. I was really trying to make some ornaments for my tree this year, and I think I succeeded. This is a piece called Hark by Bent Creek. It's a little sampler, and then the way that they arrange the letters spells out different words. So in this case, it says Hark with a couple of little angels coming to say, and then finished it with this cording and a cute little wreath fabric. So definitely one of my favorite pieces. I just thought it was so cute. And then the very last piece to show you, oh my goodness, is O Tannenbaum. I believe this is by Country and Colonial Stitches. I will double check and put that in the box below. But a piece that I decided to finish kind of with this curved finish there. Some fabric I got in a bag that I just cut up. The button wasn't attached and everything. So really easy, quick finish there. So that is... oh my goodness, that is the end of that. It was so fun to show you all of the pieces that I am working on, that I will be continuing to work on, that I have finished. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you found some inspiration, got a lot of good stitching in, and I will see you in a future video. Thanks everybody. Bye.